Have you ever noticed this weird behavior with weapon selection? Take the MiG-29 SMT for example. I've got 2 ERs and 4 R-73s. I enable weapon selection and select my ERs, everything's normal, but when I select my R-73s, it selects 2 of them at a time before cycling back to the ER. Or let's look at F-16s. The F-16A Block 15 ADF selects its AIM-9Ls in 2 groups of 2, but the Block 20 MLU selects all 4 of its AIM-9Ls at once. The ADF and MLU have literally the exact same weapon, so what's going on here? The short answer is that this usually happens when you get a missile stock and have more of the same missile unlockable with a modification. To understand why this is the case, we need to take a look at the loadout system. Back before March 2022, every plane used the old loadout system. With this system, every loadout was pre-made by Gaijin, and to be able to use a loadout, you had to have all the requisite modifications. Weapons were not split in the weapon selector. This system was pretty straightforward but obviously flawed for top-tier jets, so the ability to make custom loadouts was desperately needed. The custom loadout system was a good change across the board and for the most part works very well, although there are some quirks, one of them being the way stock missiles are handled. I'm assuming the technology to enable or disable certain weapons on certain hardpoints based on what modifications you have just isn't there yet, so Gaijin's solution was to add a separate type of missile with the express purpose of being available when you're stock. In the files, these missiles have _default tacked onto the end of their name, but apart from that, they're functionally the same. They have the same name, they're the same visually, and their performance is the same. I checked all of them to make sure, and don't worry, Gaijin isn't gimping your stock missiles. So on the surface, the stock and unlockable versions of a missile look and function the exact same way, but internally the game sees them as if they were entirely separate weapons since they have different weapon IDs. And that's why you have to cycle through the same missile twice. In the eyes of the weapon selector, having 2 stock R-73s and 2 unlockable R-73s is no different from having 2 R-73s and 2 R-60Ms. Some planes get multiple types of missile stock. The MiG-21 BIS, for example, gets 3. It gets R-3S, R-3R, and R-13M1 stock, so all 3 of those weapons get split, but since there are no stock R-60Ms, the R-60Ms always get grouped together. Things start to get interesting when there are multiple missiles on the same pylon, like you find on the A-10 late, which gets stock AIM-9Ls but does not have split AIM-9L groups when you get the modification and take 4. It seems to me like this is possible because the double launcher missiles are part of a so-called container, and the container is the one that gets the restriction, but I'm not really a name brand data miner, so I'm not sure if that's true. Regardless, in general, if your plane gets 2 missile stock and you unlock the modification to carry more of that type on the same weapon slot, it will not split them, like with the A-10. The Israeli F-4E has 2 AIM-9Ds stock, and 2 more double launcher pairs unlockable with a modification, and all of those grouped together. But for some reason, the Su-17M4, which has a similar setup for its launchers, uses the stock type of R-60M for its inner pylons, so its missiles do split into 2 groups. So as with everything in War Thunder, it's inconsistent. I think the most interesting case of stock missiles and the weapon selector is actually on the Tornado IDS, which gets a couple stock Mark 83 bombs which are copy-paste and identical with an underscore default name just like the stock missiles, and more Mark 83 bombs unlockable with a modification. But they actually enabled the unlockable ones on the same pylons as the stock ones. Since the weapons are completely identical in every way including name, if you didn't know that one was stock and one was unlockable, it just looks like the same weapon is listed twice. Sure enough, if you mix stock and unlockable bombs, you get split weapon groups. So now you know why you have to fight your weapon selector sometimes, so what do you do with this information? Not much, honestly. There's nothing you can do about it, and I don't expect it to get fixed, so you just have to get used to it, which isn't a big deal. It's just a little annoying sometimes to go back and forth between planes that do it and planes that don't, since you might warm up the wrong type of missile on accident. I'm working on a couple videos right now. Consider subscribing if you don't want to miss those, come hang out on Discord, and thanks for watching.